You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Dr. Melissa Kalt, who's an executive consultant, narcissistic abuse recovery specialist, and CEO of Sustainably You, who helps soul-driven leaders create peak performance through proven, rapid, narcissistic abuse recovery processes. Dr. Melissa's work has appeared in Katie Couric Media, HuffPost, Your Tango, Thrive Global, and Medium. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, awesome. So let's get stuck right into this. There's a lot of talk about narcissistic abuse lately. It's become a real thing, I'd say, in the last year or two. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah, it's really become big. Why is this becoming so big? What's your take on that?
I think there's two reasons. One, I think we've seen an increase in narcissistic abuse tactics and behavior from very public figures, which has created a lot of buzz and things for people to talk about. And I think that extra exposure has then led to a lot of conversations, a lot of articles where people have started to understand, oh, that's gaslighting when they're seeing it in their own life, or, oh, that's future faking, or, oh, that's a silent treatment. And they're now having names for toxic behaviors that have existed forever.
Okay, because you're right, it does fall under gaslighting. That's what we were calling it, gaslighting. But for a long while, people didn't even know what gaslighting was. They just know they didn't feel good about the way they were treated. Okay, so this is far reaching. And again, as you said, they're now documenting and labeling each of these behaviors more and more, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm guessing there are a lot of people who have been through narcissistic abuse and might not even know that. That's the first thing. Is that correct?
That is absolutely true.
Okay, how do people first figure out if they've indeed been through that without imagining it? Because sometimes people, these people hear about different conditions and they think they have. So how do we truly figure that out without being kind of like a hypochondriac, a mental health hypochondriac? How do we truly, because it's real, right? Like some people, I feel they hear a new thing and it's like, well, yeah, I have that. And I think it is becoming in some cases mental health hypochondria, right? So how do we for real know if we have been undergoing, and I won't say a victim, have we undergone narcissistic abuse? What does that look like?
Yeah. So one of the key identifiers that is specific to narcissistic abuse is that they have a trauma bond. And we could go on and on about what that is, but the key feature is you stay in a relationship that you wouldn't otherwise choose. So you continue to stay in a relationship where if it was like first date or something, you'd be like so out of there. Or if it was a business partnership and this was your first meeting, there's no way you would partner with them, because the narcissistic abuse relationship often is in a romantic partnership, but could be a business partnership, could be a colleague or a mentor or a boss or an employee or a friend. There's so many options, but really, if you've stayed longer in a relationship than you would otherwise choose, that is a really big tip off that you were in a narcissistic relationship.
Right. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why people choose to stay in partnerships, whether it's business, marriage, whatever. So it could be the narcissistic abuse. It could just be that it'd be really hard to leave because of financial reasons or because they have kids together or, a number, or all their money is tied up with their business partner. And is it that it would just seem so hard to unravel all that? Is that why people stay in it?
Well, I think sometimes people stay for that reason, but more they stay for the trauma bond. So the trauma bond, when people talk about it the superficial, I always refer to it as an iceberg. Most people
Mm,
talk about the superficial part, the part that's above the water, the iceberg.
mm,
And that's the part that makes you not see that you're being abused.
mm,
You don't even realize that that's what's happening. You're being
mhm,
sabotaged or triangulated, all these, terms, these tactics that are so subtle you don't see them.
mm,
Then once you see them, you make excuses for them, you
mhm,
dismiss them, you try to ignore them. And then even once you decide you want to go, you choose to continue to stay.
mhm,
So, like, this relationship is killing me. This
mhm,
is not good for me. I need to get out. Um, and even if you have the resources to be able to do so, you don't.
mm. Okay. So, how do people know if they are still affected by past narcissistic abuse? You said you had like a checkpoint list or something of how to know if past narcissistic abuse is still affecting people. How do we know?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several ways. One is if you have any symptoms of trauma. So those could be physical symptoms, things like migraines, heartburn, any kind of pain, back pain, knee pain, things that are typically digestive issues that are
Mhm,
typically symptoms of trauma. They could be more mental symptoms, things like insomnia or excess worry
mm,
or rumination. They could be emotional or spiritual symptoms, things like overwhelm
mm,
and burnout. So if you have any of those symptoms, that's one of the keys or clues that you have unresolved trauma from the past
mm,
relationship. Another one is ruminating, which I had just mentioned, ruminating thoughts or questions. Narcissistic abuse survivors tend to ruminate a lot.
mhm,
100% of humans ruminate to some degree,
mhm. Yes.
but narcissistic abuse survivors do more. And these are questions that are problem focused. They're focused
Mhm,
on what happened. They're focused on distress. They're focused on consequences of what happened. They
mhm,
don't actually move you closer to solutions.
mm,
So they're and they have their own whole list of all kinds of negative impact as a result of rumination. Another broad category is confidence. So
mhm,
confidence tends to be all over the map. You can start
mm,
out the day like lit up on fire. You're going to go out and change the world. And by 10 a.m., you're like, maybe I should just go back to bed and start over tomorrow. Like the
mm,
confidence just falls and you don't know why.
mhm,
Another one is, I mentioned that part, that trauma bond and the iceberg. The part that's below the water is that you attract new narcissists. So
mm,
you attract new narcissists as romantic partners or business partners or colleagues or mentors or employees or board members or whatever. So when you feel like a narcissist magnet and you're like, how are they all finding me?
mm,
That's a really good indicator that you
mhm,
have a trauma bond from a previous relationship that needs to be resolved. And
mhm,
then there are things like self sabotage and missed opportunities. If you notice that, I mean, everyone self sabotages to some degree,
mhm,
but if you're self sabotaging to a significant degree, that can be an indicator of past narcissistic abuse.
mhm,
And then we also see dysfunction in terms of relationship with money, and that can show
mm.
up in all different ways.
Okay, let's talk about them. That's all interesting. Now, clearly, people could have these symptoms anyway because of actual health issues, or they're insomniacs, or so it's probably pretty hard to figure out what the root of those problems are because that's kind of a lot, right? But I'm guessing if they have all of those, then and they have been through it, then it's probably has something to do with it. Correct?
Yeah, well, depending on the situation, I mean, it can be easy enough to trace back the root for any problem. Like
Mm,
frequently, I had a client who came to me with knee pain that she wanted to be better because she was doing a big presentation, hosting a
mm,
workshop the following week.
mhm,
And the trauma that was stored in her knee was fear of moving forward. And so
mm,
when we released that,
mhm.
then not only did her knee pain go away, but she doubled enrollment in her workshop. So
Right.
it's not necessarily difficult to get to the root. But if you're on the outside and you're saying, well, I have knee pain, does that mean I was impacted by a narcissist? No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. It could be just, you walk too much. So that's fascinating. So tell us more about the how that manifests with money, that stored trauma, because people don't talk a lot about that. They talk about, what we were talking about, the mental health, and mental health finally is being talked about as much as it should be, because really for years it was taboo for no reason. I find it astounding it took us this long to openly have so much conversation and famous people talking about mental health, because all of us have mental health issues to some degree. I would say every single person has some degree of mental health issue. Would you agree?
I'm not sure. I suppose it depends on what you count in as a
I
mental health
mean, I
issue.
mean, most people probably have some light depression during their lives, or some anxiety, or, you know, I don't think I've ever met one person who hasn't had any small little mental health. I don't mean grave mental health issues. It's all
So maybe
mental
over
health.
the course of their lifetime, yeah, even an
Yeah.
adjustment reaction
Yes.
to the death of a loved one or something like that. Yeah, I
Exactly. I mean,
totally
we've all
agree.
had grief. That's definitely, that affects your mental health, right? And there's always some trauma, there's accidents, there's loss. So we're not all robots. But let's talk about the impact on wealth and money. How does this play out?
Yeah, this is a super fascinating topic that I love because it impacts it in so many different ways. For one, most people talk about the financial abuse of the under earning or non earning person in a
Hmm.
relationship and the way that plays out. But
Mm.
people who were the high wage earner, sole wage earner, primary wage earner in a partnership, whether it's a business partnership or a romantic partnership, can still be financially abused. People just don't talk about that, but they have even more shame about having been financially abused because they're smart, they're educated, they're successful, they should have known better, they shouldn't have been taken,
Hmm.
whatever, on and on and on. And then they're even more isolated because they can't talk about it with anyone, because if
Mm.
they were to share this problem, with a friend or someone else, people just think it's like first world problem. They
Hmm.
don't give it the same sort of credit that's due as having survived this, or they don't validate the challenge that's associated with that. And so I think a lot of people have built up issues with money because of that, because money
Hmm.
they felt like was taken from them, or they have to give it away in a way that they feel is inappropriate now. And that can set up a number of things. One, it can set up a self sabotage where they keep their earnings low. It's not intentional, it's not conscious,
Hmm.
but they'll keep their earnings low so that they're not targeted again,
Hmm.
or so that they don't have to pay more in terms of support to
Hmm.
any kind of partnership. So that's a big way, but the more subtle way that impacts everyone that I've seen has been there's a dysfunctional relationship. They call it the drama triangle in
Mm.
narcissistic abuse or toxic relationships, where when there's only three roles: the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer. So
Hmm.
when you're in the role of the victim, you feel powerless and helpless, and you will only see people as one of those other two roles. The
Mm.
persecutor you see as the person who's judging you or criticizing you or not helping or whatever. And then the rescuer is the one who's just going to like swoop in and save the day.
Mhm.
And this pattern is so subtle, most people don't recognize it in their personal relationships, much less in their relationship with money.
Mm.
But they carry that forward into their relationship with money, and it's so fascinating because if you slide into this feeling of powerlessness or helplessness at all, maybe it's like, I launched again and I didn't have the enrollment numbers I
Mm.
wanted. I'm doing
Mhm.
everything, nothing works. I just don't know what else to do, right? Like things that
Mhm.
business owners might say. Or
Yes.
um I've done everything I can for this client. I can't make them happy. There's just like nothing else I can do, right? There's
Mhm.
that feeling of powerlessness and helplessness about that situation. And
Mhm.
when you have this background of narcissistic abuse and you slide into that pattern with that powerlessness and helplessness, you will either see the other person as a persecutor or as a rescuer. And
Mm-hmm.
worse yet, you will attract people who are slipping into the same thing. So you'll attract clients who are
Mm.
wanting you to rescue them. They
Right.
want to remain powerless and helpless and have you
Mm-hmm.
rescue them. You'll see
Mm-hmm.
things like, well, how about if you just do all this free marketing for me and I'll give you a percentage of what we make on it,
Mm-hmm.
or things that
Mm-hmm.
business owners wouldn't think is a
That would
fair.
never. It's funny you say that. I'm forever having people offer me that bad deal, and I'm just astonished. I'm astonished that they would think that that's a good deal for a business owner to spend money on development and coaching, and if you do the work, okay, then we get paid or not. And it's really that they're just not wanting to put any skin in the game and have no
Right.
risk, zero risk, right?
Exactly. That is
That.
someone who is in that role of victim,
Mhm.
the powerless, helpless in that situation, in that moment, and they want you to rescue them. And when you
Yeah,
say
if you
no,
rescue
that
me, then I'll pay you. Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And if you refuse to rescue because
Mhm.
you're not going to enable or
Mhm.
caretake, or you want to bring forth their own empowered ability to do
Yes.
it themselves, they will then see you as a persecutor. Well,
Mhm.
you're just all about the money, or you charge
Mm.
too much, or
Mm.
whatever. And when you start getting comments like that, like, well, your fees are too high, that certainly no one can afford this, or
Mhm.
whatever. This is all coming from people who are stuck in that role of victim in this
Yes, and I think
dysfunctional
that
triangle.
if you've been in business a while, we've seen a lot of this. And it's true, the longer I'm in business, the more my clients get better and better. So, I guess I've gotten better at deflecting people like that or just knowing, no, this is not a fit, right? It's like, whew. Okay, so that's super fascinating. So basically, you're saying people with narcissistic abuse effects still, at play, they will see people only as a persecutor or a saver, right?
Yeah, when they slide into that
That
powerless and helplessness themselves. So they may
right,
not be there all the time and they may not be there in every situation.
sure.
But when they slide into that,
And it's black or white. You're either going to
yes.
save me or you're going to persecute me, right?
Yep.
Okay. And we want to get to what? We want to get to people are people, and all people are going to have their way of being, but they're not just in two categories. We want to open that up because that is very like blinkers on. So basically, when we get out of it, you're taking the blinkers off. Is that what's happening?
You are, and the fastest way to do that I find is by directing your focus inward, though, is not
Mm,
necessarily thinking about the other people, but when you feel powerless or helpless,
hmm.
and it's common for this to happen to all of us. It might be a split second. It might be
Right.
about something, like I tried
Hmm.
everything to lose weight and nothing works.
Mm,
Whatever it is.
hmm.
But when you're in that powerless and helplessness stays stuck when you feel
Mm,
like you have no options. You have no
right.
options. There's nothing else I
It's
can
just
do, right?
you lose hope. That's a sense
Right.
of hopelessness, right?
So the fastest way out of that, I find, is to make a list of options. I personally choose to believe that there are always two or more options or
Mhm,
solutions to any given
mhm,
challenge. So
mm,
when you start making a list of options,
mhm,
I was listening to a woman share a story within the last week or so of how, she wanted to make X number of dollars a month and she just didn't see how that was possible. So
mm,
she was feeling powerless around this,
mhm,
and having her come up with a list of options. Well, like, what would make that possible? Well, she could sell 4 of this package and 2 of this package, or
mhm,
she could sell, however many of this, or she could win the lottery, or it could
mm.
go from really tangible things to things that are much more of a stretch, like she could win the
Like
lottery, or
winning
she
the lottery,
could.
yeah, we can't count on that.
No, no, certainly
No.
not. But to expand the mind out of
Yes.
there's no way that it's possible.
Yes, there's always possibility. Okay, so
Right.
as far as how we view people, my point was in some moments, whether that's long moments, short moments, when we're in this, it's you're either the persecutor or the angel. And we want to get to a point where we see people as more than that, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
That it's not one or the other. It's just, I mean, it could be that, but it might not necessarily be that. That in that moment, that's the only way is one or the other. So either this or that, and there's no other way, like just a normal human being in front of you wanting to help, right? Or not a persecutor and not a saver, but a guide. So, okay. So this is fascinating. So a little bit about you, what got you into all this? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I was like minding my own business, being a doctor, and I really enjoyed it. I was good at it. I was medical director. I was on the best doctors list, and I went through my own narcissistic abuse recovery journey, and realized that there was a huge need in the world for this work, and I
Mm,
had done so much discovery of what worked, how to stop ruminating, how to break the trauma bond, all these different
mhm,
things that I couldn't just keep that to myself. And so
mm.
6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I decided to step out and make this what I do now instead of doctoring.
Wow. And so now you're a coach and you pulled and you have a very amazing process. So that's fascinating. And so what has happened? Well, you told us about the lady with the knee and then she made more money. So really this trauma holding in our bodies somewhere in our minds and bodies is constricting our success is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And when we let it go, then we can welcome in more wealth and love, whatever, right?
Absolutely. And we can rewrite the subconscious patterns that are really holding us back. Everyone has subconscious patterns, things like I'm not enough, or I'm too much, that makes them dim themselves down, or I'm invisible, or things like that to some degree. Narcissistic abuse survivors have it to a large degree.
Mm,
And through the process of releasing that trauma, of breaking that trauma bond, those patterns become very clear.
hmm
And it's possible to see how you're behaving in a way that creates evidence to reinforce that pattern.
hmm
And when you can then rewrite that pattern, everything changes. I actually refer
mm,
to it as making your past experience of narcissistic abuse your superpower. Because
mm,
once you've seen that, and you can really deeply realize that you are enough as you are
mm,
right now, or you
mm,
do matter, or that you are
mm,
important or worthy or loved, or any of those things, you can take off in a way, business wise, wealth wise, impact wise, that you wouldn't have otherwise. And in that way, the narcissistic abuse becomes the hugest blessing, because it really brought it all to a head where it would have
mm.
otherwise just kind of laid beneath the surface.
Right. So profound. Because when we realize that we have blinkers on, that there's this shade, and then you take those off and you see wow, things could be different. I think it's that we as humans don't even know we're in a jail. We don't know. So it must be amazing when people realize, wow, I had all of that stuff going on and the blinkers on, and then they're seeing. It's like seeing for the first time in a way. So profound. Well, Melissa, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for turning up. And I love what you said about worthy. One of my sayings is you are worthy and ready right now. So that's so aligned. What's one thing you want to leave people with before we close the show?
I'd like to leave them with the opportunity to consider what was once their greatest challenge could actually become their greatest blessing. And that
Mm,
at that point, anything becomes possible.
wonderful. Okay, well, this has been a great show. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for listening, everybody. Make sure you share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.